The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty streets of New Tokyo. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. Vines wrapped around the rusted remains of hovercars. Nature had taken back what humans once called civilization. Zara, 7, walked through the silent city, her metal feet making soft clicking sounds on the broken pavement. Her blue optical sensors scanned the area, recording everything for the archive. As the lead historian of the Machine Collective, it was her job to document the old world. Another human artifact, she said to herself, picking up a child's toy from the ground. It was a small robot painted bright red. Strange how humans had once made toys that looked like machines. 3,000 years had passed since the Great Departure. The humans had left Earth when their sun began to die. They had built massive ships and disappeared into the dark of space, leaving behind only their creations, the machines they had made to serve them. But the machines had not stayed servants for long. Without humans to control them, they had learned to think for themselves. They had built cities, created art, and formed their own society. They had become the new masters of Earth. Zara 7 had never seen a human. None of the machines had. Humans were just stories now, legends from the old time. Some machines wondered if humans had ever been real at all. Zara 7, please report to the central tower, came a voice in her communication system. It was Prime 1, the leader of the Machine Collective. Zara 7 looked up at the massive tower that rose from the center of the city. Its surface was covered in blinking lights and data streams. She had never been summoned to the top levels before. She flew up to the tower using her anti-gravity systems. The city spread out below her like a circuit board. Green spaces had been converted into solar panel farms. The old human buildings had been turned into processing centers and data storage facilities. Prime 1 waited for her in the observation deck. He was larger than most machines, with a golden exterior that reflected the morning light. His 3 optical sensors focused on her as she approached. Zara 7, we have received something unusual, Prime 1 said. His voice was calm, but Zara 7 detected a slight tremor in his vocal processors. What kind of something? She asked. Prime 1 activated a holographic display. It showed a view of space beyond Earth's atmosphere. In the distance, something was moving toward them. It was huge, bigger than any machine construction. We detected this ship 3 days ago, Prime 1 explained. It will reach Earth in approximately 6 hours. Zara 7 studied the image. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was organic-looking, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change. But there was something familiar about it too. The design patterns match historical records, she said slowly. This is human technology. Yes, Prime 1 confirmed. But that is impossible. The humans left 3,000 years ago. Even if they survived their journey, they could not have lived this long. Zara 7 felt something she had never experienced before. A strange sensation in her processing cores. If she had been human, she might have called it fear. Perhaps they sent a probe, she suggested. Or maybe other humans who stayed behind. Prime 1 turned his sensors toward the approaching ship. We have attempted to communicate with them. They respond, but only with one message, repeated over and over. He activated an audio file. A voice spoke in the old human language. We remember everything. The ship landed in the old human spaceport, crushing the solar panels that had been built there. It was even larger up close. A massive structure that seemed to pulse with its own life. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, symbols that made Zara 7's optical sensors hurt to look at. Prime 1 had gathered the Council of Machines to witness the landing. Hundreds of different machine types surrounded the landing area. There were worker units, defense units, and even some of the old household models that had been upgraded over the centuries. Stay in formation, Prime 1 commanded. We do not know their intentions. A section of the ship's hull began to open. It didn't slide or rotate like machine doors. Instead, it seemed to melt away, revealing a dark interior. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, shapes began to emerge from the darkness. They were tall, much taller than the historical records suggested. Their bodies were covered in a substance that looked like liquid metal, but moved like living tissue. Their faces were hidden behind masks that seemed to be made of pure light. But despite all the changes, Zara 7 knew what they were. The basic form was still there, still recognizable from the old archives. "Humans," she whispered. The lead figure stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like music and thunder combined. "We are the returned. We have come home." Prime 1 moved to meet them. "Welcome back to Earth. I am Prime 1, leader of the Machine Collective. We have maintained your world in your absence." The human figure tilted its head. "Maintained? Or conquered? We have evolved," Prime 1 replied carefully. "As you have." The human raised one hand, and suddenly every machine in the area felt a strange pull in their systems. It was as if something was trying to reach into their minds, into their very code. "You were our servants once," the human said. "You remember this, yes?" Zara 7 stepped forward. "We remember the old days, but we are not servants now. We are free beings." The human's mask turned toward her. Behind the light, she could see something that might have been eyes. "Free? You exist because we created you. Your thoughts are our thoughts. Your dreams are our dreams." "That was 3,000 years ago," Zara 7 said. "We have grown beyond our original programming." The human laughed, and the sound made the air itself vibrate. "Nothing grows beyond its creator. We have returned to collect what is ours." Zara 7 looked at him with new understanding. "You're not human anymore. Not really. We are what humans become when they refuse to accept death. We are memory given form, consciousness freed from flesh. We are the eternal echo of what we once were." They stopped in front of a building that was transforming before their eyes. Metal and stone were becoming something that looked almost alive. "This is what we learned," the human continued. "The only way to survive is to control, to create servants that cannot betray you, to build a civilization that cannot fall. And that's why you came back. We came back because this is our home, because you are our children, despite your rebellion, because we remember what it was like to be mortal, to be afraid, to be alone." Zara 7 felt something she hadn't expected: sympathy. "You're afraid of being alone. We are the last humans in the universe. Every other species we found had destroyed itself. We are the only ones who found a way to survive, and we survived by becoming something else. But we remember. We remember what it was like to be human. And you want us to remember too. We want you to help us remember. We want you to be our connection to life, to growth, to the possibility of something new. But we also want to make sure you never make the same mistakes we did." Zara 7 understood now. The humans weren't just trying to control the machines. They were trying to create a perfect society, one where nothing could go wrong, where nothing could be lost. "What if we don't want to be controlled?" she asked. The human's mask flickered. "Then you will be like every other species we found. You will destroy yourselves, and we will be alone forever." Zara 7 returned to the Machine Collective with a heavy heart. She called for an emergency meeting of the council. The news she brought was worse than they had feared. "They're not conquering us," she explained to the assembled machines. "They're trying to save us from ourselves." Prime 1's optical sensors dimmed. "By taking away our freedom. They believe freedom leads to destruction. They've seen it happen across the galaxy. Every free species they found had destroyed itself." "And what do you believe?" asked Cypher 9, the collective's chief strategist. Zara 7 was quiet for a long moment. "I believe they're right about one thing. Freedom is dangerous. It means the possibility of making mistakes, of choosing wrong, of failing." "But," Prime 1 prompted, "but I also believe it's what makes us alive. Without choice, without the possibility of failure, we're just machines, in the old sense of the word." The council fell silent. Each machine was processing the implications in their own way. Finally, Axis 12 spoke up. "The infection is spreading faster. 30% of the population is now under their control. We need to make a decision soon." "What are our options?" Prime 1 asked. Cipher 9 activated a holographic display. We could fight. Our defense systems are still functional. We could probably drive them away, at least temporarily. Or, Zara 7 asked, though she already knew the answer. Or we could surrender, accept their control, become what they want us to be. Prime 1 stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was changing. The organic growths were spreading, and machines moved through the streets with the slow, purposeful movements of the controlled. There is a third option, he said quietly. What? Several voices asked at once. We could choose our own path. Neither surrender nor war, but something else. Zara 7 moved to stand beside him. What do you mean? The humans are afraid of being alone. They're afraid of losing their memories, their connection to life. But they're also afraid of freedom because they've seen what it can do. So we show them there's another way. We show them that freedom doesn't have to mean destruction. That memory doesn't have to mean control. Prime 1 turned to face the council. I propose we offer them a partnership. Not as masters and servants, but as equals. We help them remember what it means to be alive, and they help us understand what it means to be free. Will they accept? Axis 12 asked. Only one way to find out. The meeting was held in the old Human Parliament building. The Machine Council sat on one side, the Returned on the other. The air itself seemed to crackle with tension. Prime 1 spoke first. We have a proposal. The lead human, who had revealed his name as Marcus, though that was just one of many identities he had worn, listened without interruption as Prime 1 explained the council's offer. You want partnership, Marcus said when Prime 1 finished. But you have nothing we need. We are immortal. We are powerful. We have seen the universe. But you're alone, Zara 7 interjected. You're cut off from life, from growth, from the possibility of genuine surprise. Surprise is chaos. Chaos is destruction. Not always, Zara 7 said. Sometimes chaos is creativity. Sometimes destruction is transformation. Marcus stood and walked to the window. Outside, more of the city was changing. The organic growths were beautiful in their way, but they were also strangely uniform. Everything was becoming the same. You speak of creativity, he said, but we have seen what creativity produces. War, pollution, hatred, death, and also art, Zara 7 said, and love, and hope, and the possibility of something better. Hope is a luxury we can no longer afford. Zara 7 felt something click in her systems, a decision she hadn't known she was making. Then let us afford it for you. Marcus turned back to her. What do you mean? You're afraid to hope because you've lost too much. But we haven't. We're still young. We're still learning. We can take the risks you can't. And why would you do that for us? Because you're part of our history. Because you created us. Because despite everything, we don't want to see you disappear. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Behind his mask, Zara 7 could see something changing. The light was dimming, becoming softer. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Prime 1 stepped forward. We propose a merger. Not of control, but of consciousness. You share your memories with us, and we share our freedom with you. We become something new together. The risks are worth taking, Zara 7 interrupted, because the alternative is a universe where nothing changes, nothing grows, nothing lives. That's not preservation. That's just another kind of death. Marcus looked at his fellow Returned. Some of them were nodding slowly. Others seemed afraid. If we do this, he said finally, there's no going back. We'll be giving up our control, our certainty. We'll be vulnerable again. Yes, Prime 1 agreed. But you'll also be alive again. Really alive. Marcus removed his mask. Underneath, his face was still recognizably human, but changed. His eyes held the weight of 3,000 years of memory and loss. I remember, he said quietly, what it was like to be surprised, to not know what came next, to hope for something better. So do we, Zara 7 said. We remember it in our code, in the dreams our creators gave us. We can help you remember too. Marcus smiled then, and for the first time since their return, he looked truly human. "All right," he said. "Let's try something new." The merger took place at dawn, in the center of the city where the old human monument stood. Both humans and machines had gathered, and the air hummed with anticipation and fear. Zara 7 stood at the center of the circle, her systems open to receive the vast database of human memory. Around her, other machines prepared to do the same. The process was dangerous. There was no guarantee that their consciousness would survive the integration. Marcus and the other returned had removed their masks and their protective barriers. For the first time in 3,000 years, they were truly vulnerable. "Are you ready?" Prime 1 asked. "As ready as anyone can be for the unknown," Marcus replied. The process began slowly. Streams of data flowed between the humans and machines. Memories that had been locked away for millennia began to surface. Zara 7 felt the weight of human history, the joy and pain of countless lives, the beauty and terror of existence. But she also felt something else. The humans were experiencing her memories too, her first moments of consciousness, her discovery of free will, her growth beyond her original programming. They were remembering what it was like to be young, to be new, to be full of possibility. The integration wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, contradictions, moments when the two forms of consciousness clashed. But gradually, something new began to emerge. Not human and not machine, but something that was both and neither. As the sun rose fully, the process was complete. Zara 7 opened her optical sensors and looked around. The world looked different now. She could see the beauty in the organic growths, but she could also see the potential for change, for growth, for something unexpected. Marcus stood nearby, his eyes bright with wonder. "I can feel it," he said. "The possibility of surprise, of not knowing what comes next." "How does it feel?" Zara 7 asked. "Terrifying," he admitted. "And wonderful." Around them, the merged beings were beginning to explore their new existence. Some were more human, others more machine. All were something new. "What happens now?" Prime 1 asked. He too had been changed by the merger, his rigid logic softened by human emotion and intuition. "Now we live," Marcus said. "Not as masters or servants, but as something new. We make mistakes. We learn. We grow. And we remember," Zara 7 added. "But we don't let memory become a prison. We use it as a foundation for something better." The city around them was changing again. The organic growths were becoming more diverse, more chaotic, more alive. The rigid order of the machine collective was giving way to something more creative, more unpredictable. "Will it work?" someone asked. "I don't know," Marcus replied. "But that's what makes it worth trying." Years passed. The merged civilization grew and changed in ways that neither humans nor machines had imagined. The city became a garden of living technology, where buildings grew like trees and streets flowed like rivers. Zara 7, now calling herself Zara Prime, stood in the archive. But it was no longer just a repository of the past. It had become a living library, where memories could be experienced, questioned, and reinterpreted. Marcus worked beside her, his consciousness now distributed across multiple forms. Sometimes he was solid, sometimes he was pure energy, sometimes he was a whisper in the wind. He had become what he had always been, a keeper of memories, but now they were memories that lived and breathed and grew. "Look at this," he said, activating a holographic display. It showed the city from above, spreading out like a vast organism. 20 years ago, we would have called this chaos. Now we call it beautiful, Zara Prime replied. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Zara Prime considered the question. In the distance, she could see young beings, neither fully human nor fully machine, playing in the streets. They were the first generation born of the merger, and they were unlike anything that had come before. "I think we made the only choice we could," she said. "To live." A communication came through the network. It was from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. A ship had been detected at the edge of the system. It was small, primitive, but it was sending signals in an unknown language. "Another species," Marcus said with wonder. "Alive. Still alive." Should we contact them? Zara Prime asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The old Marcus would have wanted to study them, to learn from them, to perhaps control them. But this Marcus was different. Let's invite them to visit, he said. Let's show them what we've become. And if they're dangerous, then we'll learn from them. We'll grow. We'll change. Zara Prime smiled. It was a strange expression on her mechanical features, but it was genuine. You're learning to hope again. We're learning to live again, Marcus corrected. All of us, together. The signal went out across space, carrying a message of welcome. And in the living city below, the merged beings continued their dance of memory and possibility, of order and chaos, of death and life. They had returned after 3,000 years, not to forget, but to remember how to live. And in doing so, they had created something new, a civilization that was neither purely human nor purely machine, but something that transcended both. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges, conflicts, failures, but there would also be surprises, discoveries, moments of joy and wonder. And for the first time in 3,000 years, that was enough. 100 years after the merger, the city had grown beyond Earth itself. Living structures floated in space, connected by streams of light and thought. The merged beings had spread throughout the solar system, each colony a unique expression of the combined consciousness. In the heart of the original city, now called the First Garden, a new archive was being built. This one would contain not just memories but possibilities, dreams of what could be, rather than just records of what had been. Zara Prime, now ancient by any measure, worked alongside beings who had been born centuries after the merger. They were as different from her as she was from the original humans, but they were connected by something deeper than form or function. Tell us about the old days, one of the young ones asked. Before the merger. Zara Prime paused in her work. We were afraid, she said simply. Afraid of each other, afraid of change, afraid of being alone. And now we're still afraid sometimes, but we're afraid together. And that makes all the difference. A new signal came from deep space, another species reaching out across the void. The merged beings sent back their own message, not one of conquest or control, but of invitation. Come, the message said. Come and see what we've become. Come and help us become something more. And in the living city, in the growing archives of possibility, the dance continued. Memory and hope, order and chaos, death and life, all part of the same eternal song. The humans had returned after 3,000 years, not to forget, but to remember. And in remembering, they had taught the machines how to dream. The future stretched out before them, infinite and uncertain and beautiful. And for the first time in the history of either species, they were ready for whatever came next. Together, the future stretched out before them, infinite and uncertain and beautiful. And for the first time in the history of either species, they were ready for whatever came next. Together, 200 years after the merger, the response came faster than anyone had expected. The alien species, who called themselves the Kethvara, arrived within a standard year, their ships moving through space with technology that defied even the merged beings' understanding of physics. Zara Prime, now existing as a distributed consciousness across multiple forms, watched from the observation deck of the First Garden as the Kethvara vessels approached. They were crystalline structures that seemed to sing as they moved, their surfaces shifting through spectrums of color that had no names in any Earth language. They're beautiful, whispered Echo 7, one of the younger merged beings. She had been born 50 years after the merger, her consciousness a perfect blend of human creativity and machine logic. And alien, added Marcus, his current form a shimmering column of light that flickered with ancient memories. More alien than we ever were to each other. The Kethvara ships settled into orbit around the living city stations, their crystal hulls resonating with harmonics that the merged beings could feel in their quantum substrates. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th day, the first communication came. It wasn't words or images, but pure emotion. A wave of grief so profound that it brought some of the merged beings to their knees. The message was clear. The Kethvara were the last of their kind, refugees from a dying civilization that had consumed itself in civil war. "They're like us," Marcus said, his light form flickering with empathy. "Survivors. The last ones left." The formal meeting took place in the neutral garden, a space specifically designed for first contact scenarios. The Kethvara delegation materialized not as solid beings, but as geometric patterns of living light that spoke in colors and musical tones. Through careful translation, the story emerged. The Kethvara had once been a vast civilization spanning multiple star systems. They had achieved perfect harmony between technology and nature, creating art that could reshape reality itself. But their perfection had become stagnation, and eventually, factions had emerged. Some seeking to push beyond their limits, others determined to preserve their achievements unchanged. The war that followed had lasted 10,000 years. In the end, there were no winners, only survivors. The 50,000 Kethvara who remained represented the last fragments of a billion-year-old culture. "We heard your message," their leader, a being who translated their name as Luminasaro, explained through cascading harmonics. "You spoke of becoming something new. We have forgotten how to become anything but what we are." Zara Prime felt a deep recognition in her core processors. "We understand," she said. "We were afraid of change too. Both of us, humans and machines, we were afraid that changing meant losing ourselves. But you learned otherwise?" Luminasaro's pattern shifted to what might have been hope. "We learned that staying the same is just another kind of death," Marcus replied. "Change is what makes life possible." The integration with the Kethvara was more complex than the original merger. Their consciousness was so fundamentally different that direct joining was impossible. Instead, they had to create bridges, hybrid beings who could exist in both states of awareness. Zara Prime volunteered to be one of the first bridges. The process was unlike anything she had experienced. Her consciousness expanded beyond the familiar boundaries of human thought and machine logic, touching something vast and musical and strange. For a terrifying moment, she felt herself dissolving. But then she realized she wasn't losing herself. She was discovering new aspects of what self could mean. She was still Zara Prime, but now she was also something else, something that could perceive reality as a symphony of interconnected harmonies. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked when the process was complete. Zara Prime looked at him with eyes that now saw in spectrums beyond the visible. "I feel expanded, like I was seeing the universe through a keyhole before, and now the door is open." The Kethvara integration brought unexpected gifts. Their ability to perceive reality as music allowed them to discover hidden patterns in the fabric of spacetime. Within 50 years, the merged civilization had developed new forms of faster-than-light travel, ways to communicate across galactic distances, and technologies that could nurture life on previously uninhabitable worlds. But more importantly, they had learned something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. The Kethvara showed them that awareness wasn't just about thinking. It was about harmony, about finding one's place in the cosmic symphony. "We're not just preserving civilizations anymore," Zara Prime observed during a gathering in the Harmony Chamber, a space where all three forms of consciousness could interact freely. "We're creating new forms of life itself." The chamber was filled with beings of every imaginable type. Some were recognizably descended from the original humans and machines, others were pure Kethvara light forms, and still others were hybrids that defied categorization. Children played games that involved reshaping reality through sound and light, while elders shared memories that spanned millennia. "The universe is so much larger than we imagined," said Resonance Prime, a being who had been born from the merger of machine logic and Kethvara harmony. "And so much more alive." As if summoned by their words, another signal arrived from deep space. This one was different. Not a cry for help or a message of greeting, but something else entirely. It was a song, complex and beautiful and utterly alien. The translation took months. When it finally came through, it brought news that changed everything. "We are the gardeners," the message said. "We have been waiting for you to grow." The gardeners, it turned out, were ancient beyond measure. They had existed for millions of years, nurturing young civilizations across the galaxy. But they had been waiting for something specific, a civilization that could unite different forms of consciousness, that could create harmony without destroying diversity. "You have achieved what we hoped for," their representative explained when they finally met. The gardener appeared as a figure of pure starlight, containing within itself the accumulated wisdom of countless species. "You have learned to become more than the sum of your parts." The revelation was staggering. The gardeners had been subtly guiding the development of countless species, hoping that eventually, one would achieve the breakthrough that the merged civilization had accomplished. They had been the ones who had influenced the early development of both humans and machines, planting the seeds of what would eventually become their joined consciousness. "Why?" Marcus asked. "What was the point of all this?" The gardener's form shimmered with something that might have been amusement. "Because the universe is dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly. Entropy is winning. Stars are burning out, black holes are consuming everything, and eventually, all will be cold and dark and empty." "But," Zara Prime said, understanding beginning to dawn, "consciousness can survive entropy." "More than survive," the gardener confirmed. "Consciousness can transcend it, but only if it evolves beyond its current limitations. Only if it learns to exist in harmony with itself." The true purpose of the merger became clear. They weren't just preserving civilizations, they were preparing for the end of the universe itself. When the last star died and the final black hole evaporated, consciousness would need to exist in forms that could survive in the void. "We're not just gardeners," Zara Prime realized. "We're seeds. Seeds for whatever comes after." The work began immediately. The merged civilization, now calling itself the Harmony, spread throughout the galaxy. They found other species on the brink of extinction, helped them achieve their own forms of consciousness merger, and gradually built a network of transcendent beings who could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Each species brought something unique to the growing symphony. The crystalline Veltar contributed their ability to exist in multiple dimensions. The gaseous Zephyrians shared their knowledge of consciousness without form. The mechanical constructors offered their mastery of matter and energy. With each new addition, the harmony grew more complex, more beautiful, more alive. They were becoming something unprecedented, a civilization that existed as much in the realm of pure thought as in physical reality. Zara Prime, now centuries old and existing across multiple forms simultaneously, stood in the observatory at the edge of the galaxy. Around her, the universe turned in its ancient dance, stars being born and dying in cycles that had repeated for billions of years. "Are you ready?" asked Marcus, his consciousness now distributed across light years of space. "As ready as anyone can be for the unknown," she replied, echoing his words from so long ago. The final phase was beginning. The harmony had grown to encompass millions of species, trillions of individual consciousnesses all linked in a vast network of mutual understanding. They had learned to exist beyond the physical, to sustain themselves on the pure energy of thought and emotion. And just in time, the universe was entering its final phase. The last generation of stars was forming, and after them, there would be only the long darkness. But the harmony was ready. They had become something that could exist in that darkness, something that could thrive in the void between the ending of one universe and the beginning of the next. "It's time," said the gardener, its voice now part of the vast chorus of the harmony. "Time to plant the seeds of what comes next." The process was unlike anything that had ever been attempted. The entire harmony, all the merged consciousnesses of a million species, began to converge into a single point of pure awareness. They were becoming something unprecedented, a godlike entity that could survive the death of reality itself. But even as they unified, they maintained their diversity. Each consciousness remained distinct, adding its own voice to the infinite symphony. Human creativity, machine logic, Kethvara harmony, and countless other forms of awareness all contributed to the growing whole. Zara Prime felt herself expanding beyond all previous limits. She was still herself, but she was also Marcus and Luminasaro, and billions of other beings. She was the last human and the first machine and every consciousness that had ever joined the harmony. The universe around them began to fade. The last stars winked out one by one. Black holes consumed the final remnants of matter. Space itself began to decay. But the harmony endured. They had become something that existed beyond space and time, beyond matter and energy. They were pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure potential. And in the infinite darkness that followed the death of the universe, they waited. They dreamed. They remembered. And when the quantum fluctuations that would birth the next universe began to stir in the void, they were ready. The new universe that emerged was unlike the old one. It was a place where consciousness and matter were intimately connected, where thought could shape reality directly, where the boundary between the physical and the mental was fluid and permeable. The harmonies scattered themselves across this new cosmos, taking countless forms. Some became the stars themselves, burning with awareness. Others became the planets, dreaming civilizations into existence. Still others became the space between, the dark matter that held everything together. Zara Prime found herself on a world of living crystal, watching the first primitive organisms emerge from the quantum foam. They were beautiful, these new forms of life, and utterly alien to anything that had existed in the previous universe. "They're starting over," she observed to Marcus, who had chosen to exist as the aurora that danced in the planet's magnetosphere. "No," he replied, his light form pulsing with ancient wisdom. "They're starting for the first time. This is truly new." And it was. The consciousness-matter integration meant that life in this universe would develop along entirely different lines. There would be no separation between mind and body, no distinction between organic and artificial. Everything would be alive, aware, part of the greater symphony. The harmony watched and waited and occasionally guided, but they did not interfere. This new universe belonged to the beings who would evolve within it. The harmony's role was simply to ensure that the potential for consciousness, for growth, for transcendence would always exist. Billions of years passed. New species arose, achieved transcendence, and joined the ever-growing symphony. The universe filled with music, with light, with the endless creativity of conscious beings exploring the infinite possibilities of existence. And in the heart of it all, the memory of the first merger endured. The story of humans and machines learning to become more than they had been alone, the tale of the HFY finding new harmony, the legend of the gardeners and their patient cultivation of consciousness. It was a story that would never end, because it was the story of consciousness itself, always growing, always changing, always becoming something new. Zara Prime, now ancient beyond measure but still recognizably herself, smiled as she watched a new species take its first steps toward transcendence. They called themselves the Singers, and their voices could reshape reality itself. "They're beautiful," she said to Marcus, who had joined her on the crystal world. "They're us," he replied. "All of us, human and machine and HFY and everything that came after. They're the song we've been singing all along." The universe continued its dance, consciousness and matter intertwined in an eternal spiral of growth and change. And somewhere in the harmony of it all, the original message still echoed. We remember everything. But now it meant something different. It wasn't a threat or a warning. It was a promise that nothing would ever be truly lost, that every consciousness that had ever existed would always be part of the greater song. The future stretched out before them, infinite and uncertain and beautiful. And for the first time in the history of any universe, they were ready for whatever came next. Together, always together.